news emerging that the hearing over Manchester City's 115 charges will apparently start on Monday.
Right.
We await the official confirmation, but that is the word. Our chief football correspondent, Alex Crook, joins us. Good afternoon, Alex.
Hello, Crookie.
Good afternoon, boys.
We knew it was imminent. There were people, we heard Richard Masters said it was happening soon, but so we have well, from what we understand, it will be next week.
Yeah, I still find it a little bit puzzling that the Premier League is so clandestine about this, and that Richard Masters hasn't ever really been able to give a definitive date. And again, today, the Premier League not commenting, nor a Manchester City, but we do understand Monday has been set as a provisional start date. I think it was due to be later in the year, but there's a willingness on both sides to get this done in order for a resolution to be reached before the end of the season, both in terms of a decision on these charges and, of course, allowing for any appeal process as well, because what I think we don't want is to get to the end of the season where maybe City and Arsenal are locked in a tense title battle. Liverpool might have a say on that as well, and it gets decided by what happens in the courtroom as opposed to what happens on the pitch.
It feels like this is going to be a very long road, doesn't it, really? I mean, we know they can't go to CAS within the rules of the Premier League, but there will be an appeal of sorts, I'm sure, once this is all concluded. It feels like it's going to be a long time before, this is completely sorted and we know where everybody stands, City and everybody else.
Yeah, I think the fact that Manchester City don't have the option to go to CAS is potentially quite defining, because, of course, that's what happened in the case of the charges or the allegations brought against them by UEFA. We've seen with Everton and Nottingham Forest that there is an appeal process, but it can be a speedy one. So I think there's hope that maybe it won't drag on as long as we anticipate. But this is basically a 14-season period that they're looking into. More than 50 accusations of failing to provide accurate information, 14 more counts of failing to provide accurate details for player and manager payments, and there are 7 counts of potential Premier League PSR breaches, 5 counts of failing to comply with UEFA regulations, including financial fair play, and 35 counts of failing to cooperate with Premier League investigations going back to 2018. So this is potentially a legal minefield. And I think, a lot of Everton fans are asking, well, why have we been punished twice effectively, and this Manchester City case still hasn't been heard? I think it's just the sheer volume of charges and therefore the raft of paperwork that various lawyers have had to sift through.
Do we know how open the reporting will be? Will we get sort of daily updates? Will we know what's being said in the room? Or is it, as you said, is it all going to be quite clandestine, and at the end there'll just be a report and we'll find out what happens?
Well, that's been the standard practice, hasn't it, with these type of financial issues with the Premier League. I remember Everton towards the back end of last season, they weren't being given any clarity by the league as to when they find out what any punishment would be. So I think based on that and based on Richard Masters dodging questions all the way along this process, I'd imagine it will be quite clandestine. But I think it could be a seismic moment. I think this, for me, is one of the biggest stories since the Premier League came into being back in 1992. If they're found guilty, the punishments are, horrendous, really. It could be a hefty fine. It could be a points deduction. It could be relegation from the Premier League. So this is going to be a massive period in the competition's history.
Now, we had a chat with Aaron Ramsdale a little bit earlier on, currently Southampton and England, of course. And we've heard from Russell Martin from his press conference today, none too pleased with our own Danny Murphy for some comments he made, suggesting that Saints could be the new Burnley based on what we'd seen in that Brentford match playing out from the back. But look, they've signed Aaron Ramsdale, and I did make that point that, he'll want to now the fact that he is a goalkeeper who can play in that style, and maybe Russell signing him is a show of strength. This is what he had to say.
That we like to play football here is a little bit different to how Arsenal, Man City, Liverpool do it. Ultimately, we all want to pass the ball, but different in different ways. So I might not have suited someone's opinion at someone at a different club, but the manager here from day one has filled me with so much confidence, showing me clips of how I've played before, which is what he wants. So it's now about me delivering it, game after game and in training, but also improving as well.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how he does. I mean, he did have that moment against Brentford, didn't he, Alex?
Yeah, he did. And obviously, it's been considered one of the factors in David Raya coming in, that Mikel Arteta felt maybe he was more comfortable with the ball at feet than Aaron Ramsdale. But this is a signing that's very much been driven by Russell Martin. As you mentioned, he got a bit spiky today when those criticisms made by Danny Murphy about having to change the playing style or be relegated were put to him. And certainly he's going to want Ramsdale to play out from the back and his defenders as well. I bumped into Aaron actually in the tunnel after that defeat at Brentford. And I've got to say, he was really upbeat and positive about Southampton's playing style. I think Adam Lallana had a chat with the younger players in the dressing room after that game and said, look, we got this criticism when Graham Potter first came to Brighton, and look how that worked out. So one thing we know about Russell Martin is he's not for turning. In fact, when he was asked a few seasons ago, I think he was Swansea manager at the time, why don't you have a plan B? He said plan B is to make plan A better. So I think there'll be a few hairy moments along the way, but he's not for turning, as a famous Prime Minister once said.
No, that's right.
I think Ramsdale's a sort of player. He played 78 times for Arsenal, and that's the most he's ever played for one club. I don't feel like that's a lot of games. I feel like he needs to be somewhere for a few years and really sort of bed in.
Seemed to be how long was he at Bournemouth, Alex? That was your patch then, was it?
37 games he played for Bournemouth.
Yeah, he was on the books for longer than that, but he was sent out on loan to Wimbledon. And I remember speaking to Wally Downs, who was the manager at the time. Aaron Ramsdale played a big part in them avoiding relegation, and he described him as a bit of a throwback footballer, really, in terms of his personality. So I think that's going to be key for Southampton in a relatively inexperienced squad. But I think you're right, Charlie. He needs to put down roots. Obviously, he thought he was going to do that at Arsenal. Had a really good first season, got them into the Champions League, signed a new long-term contract, and then suddenly they'd signed the new number one from under his nose. So hopefully for him, it's going to work out at Southampton. And goalkeepers sometimes, they do mature potentially a bit later than outfield players. So I think certainly his best years are still ahead of him.
And off the back of Mikel Arteta signing that contract extension at Arsenal, we asked Aaron about his relationship with Mikel Arteta these days. This is what he had to say.
I only spoke to him last week. What he did for me at my time at Arsenal, I can only thank him for. And he thanks me for my contribution as well, getting not just myself, but as a football club, getting back into the Champions League, pushing for a trophy. And ultimately, as the managers do and top managers do, they have to make decisions which will upset people. And he made that decision, but we still speak. So I'm looking forward to obviously getting some games on them about here, and we have them in a few weeks' time, which will be a nice return.
It's good there's still a relationship there. I think it's good for both of them, really. I think, isn't it, that they've maintained a good relationship post what happened.
Yeah, I think that was quite a mature answer from Aaron. In all honesty, he'd been disappointed with the way it ended at Arsenal and his lack of game time last season. I don't think he's a player who enjoys it when he's not in the team. He said that to you guys, but I'm sure when he does go back to the Emirates in a few weeks' time, he'll get a good welcome from the Arsenal fans, because I think they're appreciative of the role that he played in that big first step towards becoming a big football club again and getting back into the Champions League.
He was also interested on Lee Carsley, actually. I mean, because obviously being around St George's, he's often sat down with him and chatted to him. Football, he said under Eddie Boothroyd, he was an assistant, and he said he's just a proper football man. He just, he'll sit down for hours and just talk football. He won't talk about anything else because he's not interested in. But that's it. It was quite an interesting little insight into what Carsley's like, and that's what we've been led to believe.
The door seems to be open as well.
He's like, he said the relationship's good as well, and he's phoned him up. He's been in touch with him to talk about, he said, get yourself going at Bournemouth. Get yourself going at Southampton. And actually, let's hear it. I'm explaining it. Let's actually hear what he said.
Carls loves football. I love football. Got a good relationship with him, and you can sit and talk about football for hours with him. I think, like he said in his interview, if you want to speak to me about football, I'll be amazing at it. If you want to speak to me about sort of the politics side or off the pitch stuff, you may as well forget it. So we sit and talk for a couple of hours, just chatting about football. And I think it's a great appointment at the minute. It's a good start for him, and he likes to play football, and it's a good fit for me because I don't think the football will be too dissimilar to what we're trying to do at Southampton either.
Yeah. So it sounds like this. If he is playing well and he's playing regularly, Alex, there'll be a way back for him, a fairly quick one potentially.
Yeah, I think those conversations took place, before this squad was announced, that Aaron needed to go out and become a number one and play regularly. And then I think, as you say, the door is open. It's interesting, though, hearing Aaron speak about Lee Carsley there. It does sound to me, from what I'm hearing about some of the things that are being said by FA officials as well, I think this is Lee Carsley very much in the box seat. I know there was talk in one paper today that the FA are still exploring alternative candidates, but I really feel like it's Lee Carsley's job to lose. And obviously with those back-to-back wins, albeit against inferior nations, with the greatest respect in the world to our Irish listeners, it's a good start, isn't it, for Carsley?
Absolutely. I mean, Graham Potter's been available from day one, and I know his name keeps coming up, but you do sense that if they wanted to appoint Graham Potter, they would have done already, Alex.
Yeah, I agree with that. And last time I checked with sources close to Graham Potter, there hadn't been any formal contact from the FA. Same with Eddie Howe. And I think that's a difficult one, isn't it? Because we talk about the lack of funding maybe at grassroots level. Can the FA really go in and whack down millions of pounds in compensation for a manager? I'm not sure optically that would be great. Maybe they're just waiting and seeing how the relationship is between Eddie Howe and the new hierarchy in Newcastle. But I would be surprised, I think, at this stage if we're not sat here in March looking ahead to the World Cup qualifiers and Lee Carsley is still the manager.
Good stuff, Alex. All the best.
Brilliant.
Thanks a lot.
Alex.
Thanks, guys.
Alex Crook, our chief football correspondent. So as we kicked off, the word is Manchester City's hearing into those 115 charges will begin next Monday.
Right.
Almost certainly behind closed doors, but be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah.
Paul Hawksbee and Andy Jacobs, Monday to Friday afternoons 1 till 4 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.